Hi readers, welcome back to my channel, Lila Wanders and Reads. Lee here, and welcome to a book haul. I am not feeling so great today. I've got I got a little bit of a headache, and I figured what could fix that? A book haul and a big glass of wine. So, I might be a little bit more muted than I normally am today, just because I've got the headache. And I'm really hoping the glass of wine helps out with that, at least a little bit. Anywho, so because I had a headache, I thought, yeah, I need to go buy a book. But also, I was inspired by the video that I posted yesterday because I realized that something was missing from my collection, which I know I had previously, but now I did not have it now. I've got it now. Anywho, saving that surprise for the end, but I want to start off with a book that I had not planned to purchase, but then I read a review that Mother Horror posted on Patreon, and I was like, well, now I have to have it. And that is a review of the book Junie by Erin Crosby Eckstein. I am now following Erin on Instagram, and I urge you to do so as well. She's a young writer, and I don't know if this is her first book or not. We'll get to that. But I ran immediately out to pick up Junie after I read the review, and then before I got to the bookstore, I was looking at her Instagram account, and she talks about 3 books that inspired, I guess, Junie. Let's find out what Junie's about. A young girl must face a life-altering decision after awakening her sister's ghost, navigating truths about love, friendship, and power as the Civil War looms. 16 years old and enslaved since she was born, Junie has spent her life on the Bellarine plantation in Alabama, cooking and cleaning alongside her family and tending to the white master's daughter, Violet. Her daydreams are filled with poetry and faraway worlds, while she spends her nights secretly roaming through the forest, consumed with grief over the sudden death of her older sister, Minnie. When wealthy guests arrive from New Orleans, hinting at marriage for Violet and upending Junie's life, Junie commits a desperate act, one that rouses Minnie's spirit from the grave, tethered to this world unless Junie can free her. She enlists the aid of Caleb, the guest coachman, and their friendship soon becomes something more. Yet as long-held truths begin to crumble, she realizes that Bellarine is harboring dark and horrifying secrets that no longer can be ignored. With time ticking down, Junie begins to push against the harsh current that has controlled her entire life. As she grapples with an increasingly unfamiliar world in which she has little agency, she is forced to ask herself, when we choose love and liberation, what must we leave behind? So, again, I said I originally hadn't planned on buying this. I'd read the first couple of pages and I was like, okay. But then Mother Horror said that this book will leave you heartbroken and with a book hangover. And I was like, hell yeah, I could use a book hangover. I don't think this is her first book. It says she's the author of speculative historical fiction, personal essays, and anything else she's in the mood for. Born in Montgomery, Alabama, Eckstein grew up between the South and Los Angeles before moving to New York City, where she taught high school English for 6 years. She lives in Brooklyn, New York, with her husband and their cats. I'm hoping she posts some pictures of those cats on Instagram. Anywho, I do look forward to this, and I'm going to try to put this down here without knocking over more books. My plan for this long weekend, I'm recording this on President's Day, was to get control of this piles and piles of books I have in my recording area. That did not happen. So anyway, back to Junie. So I was stalking Erin Eckstein's Instagram page, and she talks about 3 books that inspired Junie. One was a book I read last year, and that was Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Now, let me just say, when it comes to the Bronte sisters, I am not as enamored of them as other people are because of the male main characters. I don't like them. In fact, in Jane Eyre, they talk a lot about themselves, and they're very about themselves, the men are. And so they're just not my kind of man. In fact, in Jane Eyre, at one point, the guy's just talking and talking and talking, and Jane's like, girl, I don't even know what the fuck you're on about. And I was like, girl, me too. But anyway, if you haven't read it, it is a classic, and it is a good read. Okay, I have another better looking copy of this. I bought this when Walmart was doing 2 for $1 sale back like 80 years ago. And something that I learned, so I've got an app that I log in all my books, and I bought that after I moved into this house, so I would stop buying the same book that I already have. And in the app, I can log it in by scanning the ISBN code. When I was scanning in all my upstairs books, I discovered that Walmart used the same ISBN code for all of their books in this series. And I was extremely offended by that, because then I had to manually enter them. Also, ISBN codes are supposed to be unique for each book. Rant over. For 18 years, she's known only cruelty, abuse, and insult. Now, Jane Eyre finds a new life at Thornfield Mansion as nanny for millionaire Edward Rochester's adopted child. The grand estate is beautiful. Little Adele is a charming delight. Moreover, Jane and her brilliant, haunted employer are falling desperately in love. But probably because he's the only eligible man she's ever met. But in a hidden room, something waits. Oh, wait. I said he was eligible? Gotta read it to find out. Something dreadful. The mansion's shadowed corners hide a murderous secret from Rochester's past. A living horror that threatens Edward, Adele, and Thornfield itself. A waking nightmare, aching to destroy young Jane Eyre's dreams, hopes, and even her life. Wow, that's very dramatic. Much more dramatic than I remember the book being. Anywho, so I've already read that one. So when I read Junie, I will compare Jane Eyre to Junie and try to see where she got the inspiration. The second book, these are not in any particular order, is one I have looked at. This was one of the 10 best books based on the New York Times Book Review of 2017. This was a National Book Award winner. I've looked at this before. I have other books by Jesmyn Ward, and this one is Sing, Unburied Sing. I don't know why I haven't picked it up before now. Maybe it was just waiting for it to be now. Part ghost story, part road novel. I love that. This historic National Book Award winner is a dazzling journey through Mississippi's past and present, and an epic tale of hope and survival. Following a family making the trip from their Gulf Coast town to the Mississippi State Penitentiary, Sing, Unburied Sing tests the strength of emotional bonds and the pull of our collective history. In a haunted landscape for a family reeling from loss, the trip is fraught with danger. This gorgeous novel, animated by Ward's lush and vibrant language, is rich with connection, meaning, and healing. That doesn't really tell me much about the book. Damn, I wish I had more time to read all these books. This one, as soon as I can. Soon-ish. Okay, the next book is a book that I did not realize was part of a series-ish, a dialogue, but that is All About Love, New Visions by Bell Hooks. Before I read the back of this, I want to actually read from my phone, because I have a copy of Bell's book Communion, the Female Search for Love, and on my app, the description of Communion says, renowned visionary and theorist Bell Hooks began her exploration of the meaning of love in American culture with the critically acclaimed All About Love, New Visions. She continued her national dialogue with the best-selling Salvation, Black People in Love, which now that's the only book of the trilogy that I don't have, for now. Now, in Communion, Hooks culminates her triumphant trilogy of love with Communion, the female search for love. Intimate, revealing, provocative, Communion challenges every female to courageously claim the search for love as the heroic journey we must all choose to be truly free. So I had no idea that this was part of a trilogy. Now I have to get the second one. But let's talk about All About Love, which also inspired Junie. The word love is most often defined as a noun, yet we would all love better if we used it as a verb, writes Bell Hooks as she comes out fighting and on fire in All About Love. Here, at her most provocative and intensely personal, the renowned scholar, cultural critic, and feminist skewers our view of love as romance. In its place, she offers a proactive new ethic for a people and a society bereft with lovelessness. As Bell Hooks uses her incisive mind and razor-sharp pen to explore the question, what is love? Her answers strike at both the mind and heart. In 13 concise chapters, Hooks examines her own search for emotional connection and society's failure to provide a model for learning to love. Raising the cultural paradigm that the ideal love is infused with sex and desire, she provides a new path to love that is sacred, redemptive, and healing for individuals and for a nation. The Utne Reader declared Bell Hooks one of the 100 visionaries who can change your life. All About Love is a powerful affirmation of just how profoundly she can. It took me a minute to find this, so I went in to Barnes & Noble this afternoon, having ordered a book online, I'll talk about that one next, and to pick up in store. Well then, like I said, on the web, before I got there, I read Mother Horror's review of Junie, and then I saw Erin Eckstein's Instagram page where I realized that at least 2 of these books I did not have. So, I picked up Communion by Bell Hooks in the Women's Studies section of Barnes & Noble. So immediately I went to Women's Study looking for this. But no, it was not there. The app claimed that it was in store, so I thought, where could I find this? And it ended up being in the personal growth section, and I would not have put it there because this was the other Salvation is not there. It's in the Women's Studies area, Black Voices area as well. It's a very small section. And Communion I picked up in the Women's Voices section as well. So, anywho, that's really not the point. But I do look forward to reading some of that, probably next month, Women's History Month. So, the video that I recorded earlier today, but posted yesterday, by the time you're watching this, was a Black History Month video that I called a poetry-ish edition. And I featured mainly poets, but also some short story collections and some memoirs. Maya Angelou, Paul Laurence Dunbar, and my personal favorite, Langston Hughes. When I was collecting those books, I realized, A, that I was missing a Maya Angelou book that I know I had in my collection at one point, but it's probably got left at my mom's or lost somewhere along the way. And the other was a very large book of poems by Langston Hughes. I know I had a hardcover copy. I could have sworn I still have it, but it's not logged into my app, so I might find it somewhere else at some point, but I couldn't find it. And I can't live without it. And that is The Collected Poems of Langston Hughes. And it is contains 868 poems. Nearly, I think all of his poems. But let me read the back of this. This is very important to me. I'm so glad. Even if I end up finding my hard copy, I'm glad I have this. Spanning 5 decades and comprising 868 poems, nearly 300 of which have never appeared before in book form. When was this published? This was published, I'm pretty sure I had The Panther and the Lash collection as well, and that's missing too. Someone's taken my Langston Hughes books. This was copyright 1994, this edition 1995. So 30 years ago. This magnificent volume is the definitive sampling of a writer, okay, so it's not all of his stuff, who has been called the Poet Laureate of African America and perhaps our greatest popular poet since Walt Whitman. Here, for the first time, are all the poems, yes they are, that Langston Hughes published during his lifetime, arranged in the general order in which he wrote them and annotated by Arnold Rampersad and David Rosell. I don't know who they are. Alongside such famous works as The Negro Speaks of Rivers and Montage of a Dream Deferred, the collected poems includes the author's lesser-known Verse for Children, topical poems distributed through the Associated Negro Press, and poems such as Goodbye, Christ, that were once suppressed. Is that the one I looked at? Sorry, let's take a pause here. Because I flipped through this. I've got one to read to you at the end. Index of first lines. Okay. Goodbye, Christ. 66. Ooh. That is the one I read. Anyway, I'm not going to read that one here. Anyway, Goodbye, Christ, that were once suppressed. Lyrical and pungent, passionate and polemical, the result is a treasure of a book, the essential collection of a poet whose words have entered our common language. So, I bought a copy of this 30 years ago, and I've read a lot of Langston Hughes, primarily 30 years ago. Now, I was born abroad of U.S. parents. My father was in the military. And we did move around a lot as a child to different military bases. But when I read these, I was still very young and largely untraveled. And what I mean is I didn't do much traveling on my own. I got moved around by my parents. But I hadn't been out in the world on my own and seen the world. So I'm interested in reading these poems now. When I read them first, I was young and full of idealism and hope. And now I've seen the world and I am more well-traveled and I've been out there. So I'm interested in seeing how they resonate now with a ton of 30 years of experience under my belt. One poem that would not have really spoken to me back when I was in my early 20s or mid-20s is this one. Poem to a Dead Soldier. And it means a lot more now, having been in the military myself, having been around, and also having done quite a bit of study on World War I and World War II. This poem is in a section called Poems 1921 to 1930. So it was after the First World War, but before the Second. Poem to a Dead Soldier. Death is a whore who consorts with all men. Ice-cold passion and a bitter breath adorn the bed of youth and death. Youth, the young soldier who went to the wars and embraced white death, the vilest of whores. Now we spread roses over your tomb, we who sent you to your doom. Now we make soft speeches and sob soft cries and throw soft flowers and utter soft lies. We would mold you in metal and carve you in stone, not daring to make statue of your dead flesh and bone, not daring to mention the bitter breath, nor the ice-cold passion of your love night with death. We make soft speeches, we sob soft cries, we throw soft flowers and utter soft lies. And you who were young when you went to the wars have lost your youth now with the vilest of whores. So as a 20-some-odd-year-old who only was very idealistic and had no idea what life was like or war was like, that would not have spoken to me. It speaks to me now. Anywho, I'm so excited that they had this in store and I got to have a copy because I really don't know where my hard copy is, and I know I had it. Anywho, that's it for me. This may have been a little bit muted. Again, I have a headache, but I wanted to get this out there. And I'm excited about my book haul. If you've read any of these books, I'd love to hear your opinion on them. If you are like me or a fan of Langston Hughes, I'd like to hear from you as well. If you know other poets, because I really do want to start reading some more poetry, I'd love to hear from you. I'm open to all suggestions. Anywho, that is it for me. If you've made it this far, as always, thank you for sticking with me on my journey, and happy reading.